I'm really here to do is to really put on your radar some of the many publishers that are out there and the kinds of books that they can have. And while I don't have a book from every publisher because I didn't pick a book from every publisher, I do want to put these on your radar and grab a screenshot of many of these imprint designs and their logos so that you know these are just some of the publishers that Publisher Spotlight highlights. And you may not have heard of Cicada Books or Creston Books or Little Island or Lantana or Quente de Luz. And I just think it's really important for you to recognize that beyond the big five, there are lots of publishers of high quality, great books out there. And we want you to know that you can count on a book published by Lerner or published by Astra or Chronicle, as well as Manga Classics and Eternal Tree Books. In other words, you don't have to just rely on Penguin Random House, Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins, Macmillan and Hachette, although they publish great books too. Here's some more books that are represented by Publisher Spotlight, and here's kind of the last group of books. In particular, I want to talk about one book that I am so absolutely crazy about. I think this is an exemplary example of an Ignite, Delight, and Cultivate book. It is forthcoming, which means it's not out yet, but it will be out at the end of next month. It is called Barbed Wire Between Us. It is published by Red Comet Press. It is written by Mia Wengen, who some of you may know as Pragmatic Mom. It is illustrated by Violeta Encarnacion, I believe. Encarnacion. Forgive me if I botched that. I'm really lucky to have an early advance copy of this book. There's so many things that I think are important about this book. Unfortunately, I think it's sadly a metaphor for some of what's going on today with ICE and DHS. This is Barbed Wire Between Us, as I've said. I just want you to look at, I don't know if you can tell, but there's spot foil on this book. So the barbed wire shines a little bit. This is two girls, 80 years apart. It's a reverso poem. And I love how Mia gives credit to Marilyn Singer in the afterword for inventing the reverso. What's a reverso poem? It's a poem that reads different perspectives using the same words from top to bottom or bottom to top. And Marilyn Singer, the great poet and children's book writer Marilyn Singer, invented the reverso with her first book of reverso poems called Mirror, Mirror. And there was Echo, Echo, and there's a third one that escapes me right now. But I love that. So this is a reverso poem about the Japanese, like literally about the Japanese internment camps and a young person in a migrant camp, plus or minus today. It is so beautifully done. It is, I love everything about this book. I love the jacket, the cover. I love the case cover. That was the dust jacket. I love the analogies, the text, the pacing. I believe this is a really ideal example of a book to ignite a conversation because it doesn't give you all the answers. It asks the reader to consider some questions. And it begins, the very first line of this book is, "In this land of promise, we hope to find a place to belong. To our surprise, we were unjustly imprisoned. We came with only what we could carry." So it begins that way, and then it ends as a circular story. "In this land of promise, we hope to find a place to belong." I'm just super excited about this book. We have some images to show you just the depth and power of this book. It is, as I said, a circular story or reverso poem, and it is published by Red Comet Press, which you may not have heard of. They've been around for a few years now. Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say must be 6 years. It was started. Yeah, so 6 years, so I'm good. 6 years, started by Angus Killick, who has been in publishing for all of his adult life. And and it is just an amazing, amazing book. So I'm really excited about this. I think this is a book that I might use in a first grade classroom. It's also a book that I would not hesitate to use in a high school classroom because a book that has something to share is not limited to just young people. And by young people, I meant it's not just for the 3 to 5 set. It's not just for the 5 to 14 set. And one of the things that I think I'm most known for is the fact that I don't have a ceiling effect when it comes to sharing children's books and what you can do with them. But this is a book that I think is sadly needed for our times to open up conversations. A phrase that I like to use is that the book is not the destination, it's the vehicle to the destination unknown. And if I honestly had my way, no district would ever purchase a SEL or social emotional learning curriculum because we don't need those curriculums. We just need books, images, and conversation starters to help kids navigate. And thinking about that and looking at that, I know a lot of people are really grappling with all kinds of aspects of censorship. Like what is the role of libraries? Recently, libraries had the role of helping people acquire passports taken away from them. We have libraries that are functioning in so many different ways. This book by Colleen Nelson, How to Save a Library, is just a really great example of a middle grade novel that also opens up conversations and looks at what we can do. We have chapter 1 here. The key to dodgeball is to keep moving. I'm on my toes the whole time, bouncing from foot to foot. A ball whizzes at me, I spin and I throw. We have a book that's about kids and the things they do and what they care about, friendships, and literally literacy for all. So I'm really, really excited about that. This is one of those titles that I think is something that really describes my life. And I'm really, really excited about this book, which is from Little Island Press, which you may never have heard of. It's called Making It Up as You Go Along, a children's guide to writing stories. I'm a professor of literacy and literature. I'm always looking for really great stories. I'm always looking for how-to books. I grew up reading how-to books, whether it was a cookbook or a book that I would use to figure out how to sew because we didn't have YouTube because I'm 61 years old. I am absolutely in love with this Patricia Ford book, Making It Up as You Go Along, a children's book to writing. I love everything about it. It is a nice compliment to a book that was written by Jack Cantos or a book or other books that have been written on writing, one by Grant Faulkner. But I'm really excited about it. Look at the table of contents. Eureka! What on earth? And then what? What next? Where in the world? I just love Long, Long Ago, Dig Deep. I love everything about the setup of it. I think it's user friendly. I think it's fun. I think it's accessible. It doesn't necessarily have to be read cover to cover. It might be a great book for kids to read independently if they wanted to. Would be a great resource for any classroom. And I think it also really does a good job supporting that idea that while not all talented readers are talented writers, almost all talented writers are readers. And I just love that about this. And many of my students hear me say all the time, so what and what if? And in presentations, I've said that over and over again. And I love how this book looks at and deals with the idea of what if. So it's super fun. And you can see it's just like the format is really, really good. I'm always looking for books that are going to ignite and delight, and ask kids to go deeper. And Beetle Books has published this series of books. They're actually called the Tomorrow's World books, and they're the rise of the robots, how to build a human, and the ultimate space quest. And I think these are really perfect examples of the way we taken what we learned about kids' love of the Guinness Book of World Records and encyclopedias and really built them in a contextual way to help kids explore and learn, but also not necessarily give kids everything they need. Um, Looking at the, like the how to build a human, what makes us, how does a single cell grow? Why are parts of our body smelly? I really love this. I love how graphic it is. I love the fact that these books are going to ignite and delight and cultivate conversations among kids, maybe intergenerational conversations between a child and an adult. Here's the thing. When I'm looking at a book that I'm going to choose to share with any audience, I am absolutely positively conscious of the fact that it can't just be a book that I love. And if I do think that it's a book that I love alone, then there's no point because there's no added value for me sharing it with the world. So I'm always looking for books that I think might literally ignite an unanticipated reaction that I don't expect. All right. And speaking of that, I think it's really important for us to recognize that sometimes we think we know something, but we can also put it on kids' radar. For a long time, and thanks to Ellen and her team, I've been a big fan of Flower Pot Press. You probably didn't even know this press existed, but I've been a big fan of their board books, which I believe are really just like absolutely doing what you need for young readers. Many of you are familiar with the Itsy Bitsy Spider story. The Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water spout. But I love the geometric nature of this. I love the tactile nature of this. I love the accessible illustrations that aren't too much. I love the chunky size of it. I love how solid this is. True story. I ran this over with my chair at my desk, and it still looks as good. So I'm super happy about that. The same press has also been doing these word books and I like the layout of them. I really believe that words are the key to igniting and delighting and cultivating all knowledge. Without words, we just have nothing. And so I think it's incredibly important for us to have word books. I like the categories in this 101 first word books. You can find other word books by Chronicle. This has a slightly squishy cover, and I like that too because I think it's about potential. So I'm even wondering with my students who are mostly teacher candidates, what would happen if I throw out one category of words or a couple of categories of words? What would they do? I've been having a little bit of fun with books for young people lately. And Post Wave Children's Books has this new book called A Drop in the Ocean. And by new, I think sometimes I'm talking about books that came out in 2025. Sometimes I'm talking about books that came out in 2026. So we're just going to use basically the idea that they are recently published. And this is A Drop in the Ocean. I live in Connecticut, but not that far from the Atlantic Ocean. I can get there in about 47 minutes. Not that I ever timed it. But what I love about this is the flow. No pun intended. A drop is floating in the ocean, which is warmed by the sun. And you notice the die cut, which is shadowed by the clouds, which bring rain to the earth, which creates a river. For those of you who teach elementary school or want to be elementary school teachers, this is a perfect example of a book that would also be a great writing mentor for how students could put together their writing stories. I would love to get it so that we don't separate reading and writing instruction ever. And I just love what the journey is in this particular book, how it flows from one page spread to another. And I really like basically the whole, also the cause and effect that is in here. And I just think has lots and lots of potential for what we can do. Because if we are going to ignite these conversations, we have to be comfortable with kids asking, what if? So what? Why? How does that happen? Because that is really part of the point. I'm looking at a book and I'm thinking, oh, yes, that's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about. Hopefully, it's next. Giant on the Shore. This is from Transit Children's Editions. I have to admit, I have fallen in love not only with Transit's children's books, but their adult books. Last fall, they recently republished some Edward Gorey books, and I was delighted. And they helped with an exhibit of Edward Gorey's work at the Museum of the Society of the Museum in the Society of Illustrators. But I am loving this, and on the same water theme that apparently I'm on today. He came from the sea, from across the sea through a floating giant, moves more quickly than an island. He wasn't hard to see, but no one saw him. When I was a little girl, I had a my version of a poem I loved, and it was, as I was walking up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish that man would go away. For me, this was reminiscent of my memory of that anonymous poem that I found in some treasury when I was younger. I just really love the beautiful illustrations. I love that he came from the sea, from across the sea through a floating giant, was quickly, more quickly than an island. He wasn't hard to see, but no one saw him. Then clouds beneath his shoulders, waves at his ankles, seagulls. I mean, really, how do you not want to teach metaphor and help kids understand the role that metaphor plays? This is a perfect example of a book that I think is less abstract than we think it is and more complex than we realize. And I just cannot wait to have an opportunity to share it with some young people to see how they react to this particular title. So I'm obsessing a little bit on all kinds of things and stories, old stories and new stories. And I'm partially obsessing on that because of the language and the words. I've been really focusing a lot lately on the role that words play, vocabulary plays in children's life. And earlier this month, on February 3rd, so literally 3 weeks ago today, this beautiful book, Oscar Wilde Stories for Children, came out. This is published by Little Island, and it includes some stories you may be familiar with: The Selfish Giant, The Happy Prince, The Devoted Friend, The Nightingale and the Rose, The Remarkable Rocket, The Young King. What is so amazing to me about this is a text-heavy book. Is that this is the kind of read aloud that I would love to get every parent to read to their children, because the language is so great. I just opened up to one particular page in the, I think it's still in the forward actually. And it's basically, the words are so amazing in that. The words are just so incredibly amazing in that. Actually, it's in The Selfish Giant. And it says, I should have known that. Then the hail stopped dancing over the head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and the delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. Really? Let's continue to use the vast and diverse and eclectic, eloquent language that we have. And this book does such a fabulous job of putting that together. So speaking of that, I will admit, I had a few poem books that I just could not get enough of. And one of them, although not rep by Publisher Spotlight, I wanted to highlight this book, Poems for Every Season. I think part of my reason for this is that here in New England, I'm a little sick of snow. And so I'm really looking forward to moving from February into March and spring. But I just love this collection and selection of poems for every season. I love sunflowers are my favorite flower. And it says, high on her green stem, she surveys the countryside, swaying in the wind. She begs the thick gray storm clouds, peace, go away. I need sun. I wish we could tell that to the clouds these days. But I would absolutely pair this with Oscar Wilde's Stories for Children. I might pair it with a couple of other poetry books that I'm excited about, including um, newly illustrated version of Goldfinches by Mary Oliver, illustrated by Caldecott honor winning Melissa Sweet. I love this book so much. Look at the gold foil on the goldfinches. Look at the end pages. Um, Look at Um, the case cover, everything about this. Uh, one more thing I want to mention before the pages actually begin. Writing poems for me, but not necessarily for others, is a way of offering praise to the world. That's the whole idea here, people. This is about igniting, delighting, and cultivating conversations around the world. It's about having books that explore all kinds of items. It is about books that are there, and um, here, there, and everywhere in one way or another. Speaking of the world, right now at the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art, there is an exhibit of photographs and books for youth, photographs and children's books. And Shelley Rotner is one of the photographers who is featured, as is Nina Cruz, as are a lot of absolutely fabulous um, picture bookmakers. And this book, Let's Camp, is a really good example of a here and now book with photographs that's just like exploring young people in a really concrete way to get out there and that like what are the variables for camping? What do you need? Let's pack, let's explore, let's snack, let's relax. I am, I think this is just so incredibly important that we get out of our worlds and try and explore other things. And so I am absolutely positively delighted to ignite and cultivate a world perspective by getting out of our comfort zone, people. Let's try something in a new area, in a new way, with or without certain comforts and other things like that. Speaking of the world and also the United States, knowing that this is a big sesquicentennial year, this book is not out yet. I believe it doesn't come out next week. Is it next week or maybe it is today? Ellen?
It's very, very soon. I will put it into the chat.
Okay. But I am kind of excited about this. This is a collaboration with the Washington Post. I have mixed feelings about that, but whatever. But it is America as It Happened. This is a book that I think literally will ignite conversations about different parts of world history. It is from a publisher I absolutely adore. It's a publisher that I wish existed when I first became a third grade teacher, called What on Earth. You may know them because they are the publishers of the Factopia books. Factopia Factopia books, Factopia books, and I these books are books that I think every one of my friends would have had a different one and we would have been sharing. But I also find in the work that I do now that anytime I hold up and I read one fact of these in a presentation or sitting on the ground or sitting on the subway with kids, that book absolutely disappears. So I'm really delighted. Speaking of that and other things like that, I had to have a little book about for really young kids about everything that's going on. And Flower Pot Press has this Star Spangled Banner book in board book, which I think is a really fun way to celebrate the sesquicentennial. And I think it just takes the phrases of the Star Spangled Banner. Every time I reread it, I think, oh my gosh, I forgot about that line. But I'm really happy. I'm really happy with that and other things like that. All right. Speaking of history, and I know I'm being a little bit American centric right now, but I'm going to get beyond that. If you're, this is Celine Castrovilla and Aaron Robinson's collaboration for Calkins Creek, which is an Astra book. This is Twice Enslaved. Liberty and Justice for Henrietta Wood. I think it's just so important that we share stories. This is a novel in verse. For those of you who are familiar with Marilyn Nelson's work or Jacqueline Woodson's work, Kwame Alexander's, this is just a really well done. This is probably going to be for higher level readers. I'd say kind of third-ish, high able third and up. But I just love how Celine has done so well dealing with hardships. For 2 years, she was forced to do cooking, washing, and scrubbing, forced to do the hard work of keeping Forsyth's home, forced to endure his raging temper and his vicious flaggings he inflicted with his whip. There was no pleasing him, no moving him. Although she cried in pain, cried in sorrow, but losing her family, that loneliness hurt far more than the most brutal lashing. The truth of the matter is that not everyone has had a life full of pleasantries, and we've got to be honest about that. And I think this is just a really good example. That does not mean that in Black History Month I don't support and believe in lots of Black joy. I do. Um, but I also think it's important that we have multiple perspectives and understand what led us to be here. All right. So here's a novel. Here's a novel that is Saltwater Boy by Bradley Christmas, which honestly I just kind of love saying Johnny Christmas. They're two Christmas authors and other things. When Matthew's dad gets in trouble, he makes trouble for everyone else too. With dad in jail, Matthew and his mom have a chance to put their pieces back together. Mom makes plans for a summer down the coast, fixing up Grandpa's old place in an effort to make ends meet. The beach, the swirling rock pools, and the vast ocean offer new perspective and promise. This is a book full of complications and hope. It is eloquently written. It is in prose. But I love this first line. I knew something was up when I scrunched caramel wrappers when I saw scrunched up caramel wrappers around mom's chairs like used tissues. In other words, that whole idea, I feel like yesterday when the snow was coming down and down and down, that you could have told my minor tension as a result of that by the mint. They were Andy's mint, by the Andy's mint wrappers that were randomly appearing as I was doing some other work. So I just really like this book. I think it is very poignant. I think it's well done. It's a coming of age story. It is, as I said, published by Walker Books. All right. So next month is Women's History Month. This month is Black History Month. By the way, it doesn't mean we have to just feature books for Black History or Women's History Month, but I'm always looking for the story that hasn't been told in the same way or that I think will ignite delight or cultivate an interest. We know that lots of kids are interested in dinosaurs. We know that the women who are very involved, whether it be Mary Anning or Mary Moreland, have not necessarily gotten the credit that they need. I just had recently read this picture book biography of Mary Moreland in the time of dinosaur discovery by Jane Kurtz and illustrated by Giselle Potter. And I was just really impressed with how it dealt with Mary Moreland's interest and knowledge and the development of her knowledge when for dinosaur discovery, because I think too often we've been focused on male paleontologists and other things like that. So here's a book. This is by a publisher that I absolutely love that often publishes books simultaneously in English and Spanish, Nube Ocho. And this is a really good example of a very complex picture book. This is a book that has themes of bullying and possessiveness and control in it. It is the relationship between a mouse and a mouse and a cat. There's a lot of really great text in this. It is a sophisticated book. It would be a really interesting, numerous, multiple night story time. I don't think you could necessarily finish in one. It would be interesting to see what is it that the child picks up on in terms of the themes and other things, but it is about identity and figuring out what it is that you need to do so that you can be both resilient and respectful. And this book just really, really, I really, really like it in terms of its potential to ignite delight and explore kind of parts of our inner world as well as the world around it. Here's a book that came out, I believe, last year from Child's Play. It seemed like such a different book from Child's Play for me. You may know and remember Child's Play from your childhood, from like, I know an old woman who swallowed a fly or some of their other things, but I was so excited about this book. This book is Kende Kende Kende. It is written by Kirsten Cappy. If you're not familiar with her, I'm Your Neighbor program, where they have books about the immigrant experience that they share. She's just an amazing, amazing person. She co-wrote it with Yaya Gentile, illustrations by Rahana Daria. This is a perfectly fabulous book that takes us into the ideas of displacement and what it is that we need to do for our daily life, literally, for our daily life. What does it mean to be in a camp? Everything about it. It is a picture book. It is a square trimmed picture book. It is a new country. It is figuring things out. It is bilingual. Everything about it is a book that I would love to give every elementary school in the country. It is that kind of a book. Um, what is it like to adjust, to figure things out, and what is the potential? This book, sometimes you pick a book just because it just feels right, and other things like that. Agreement Under the Stars. This is by Susannah Rosique, who I kind of like because we have the same initials and we are both named Susanna Quinta de Luz. But it is just like a really fabulous book. But little by little, day by day, the outside world grew around them, and the forest began to get smaller and smaller, reminiscent of Virginia Lee Burden and The Little House. This is a book that really looks at what is the relationship that we have with nature. What are the things that we do that maybe there's no clear-cut answer as to whether they're right or wrong. The illustrations are spectacular in this book, and I just think it really, really ignites the conversation about our environmental relationship, and then what we can do and what we need to do. So here's the deal. Sometimes the book that you need is a book that you didn't necessarily anticipate. I love a lot of what Nosy Crow is producing. It is a great group of bookmakers. And now you know your ABCs. I'm a literacy professor. They're the same people who published How to Count to One. I'm a literacy professor, and I just kind of love this. Hello. Welcome to a handy new book to help you learn your alphabet. Because just like we need to learn around the world, we need to learn our alphabet. Are you ready to learn with me? I hope you have a good time. A is for apple. Say it with me. B is for ball, a big bouncy ball. C is for castle. See, this is easy. You're doing so well. I like the trim size on this. I like the illustrations, the repetition. We know that understanding and learning about alphabetic principle, which is how letters work on the page, and phonological awareness, what the sounds are that letters have, is really important. And I think this book does a really nice job of using some of our phonological knowledge in order to help build our alphabetic principle. D is for dog. Wait, no. D is for danger. That's not a dog. That's a wolf. So I also love some of the sense of humor that we see in this. A dangerous, dangerous wolf is lurking just behind you. You can smell the wolf and hear the soft thud of its paws. E is for, it could go on for a while, but I'm going to spare you. F, okay? So, A Surprise in the Wood. This is also a Red Comet Press. They were the publishers of Barbed Wire Between Us. Some of the books that they're doing are translated. This happens to be translated by their publisher, Angus Ewan Killick. A touching story of love and the true meaning of family. Oh my God, I just love touching this book. Listen to that. Look how, fabulous it is. Mom and Papa Bear are eagerly awaiting the magical arrival of a new edition. And when the little one arrives, he isn't quite the cub they were expecting. He isn't quite the cub that they were expecting. And apparently when I put this in the dust jacket after taking it off, I put it in upside down and backwards. Sometimes that happens. Here's the case cover here. Um, so this is a metaphoric story. It is a surprise in the wood was born from the special desire to share that every life is unique, rare, and special, like David's, who we adopted at just 26 days old and thus became part of our family. So we have adoption and how like navigating relationships. I think it is, oh, it smells really good. I kind of love a lot of the things about it. I also think it's about what makes family, the family that we choose versus the family that we have. Also think that it is really important. So it also shares in the back matter the story of the real adoption and Alan Herndon Dudley syndrome, or AHDS, which is where the thyroid fails to work properly. And so that is important, but I do really, really like the story and have had a chance to share it with one group of students, and I was super, super impressed at how insightful they were when they looked at it. Welcome, exclaimed Papa Bear passionately. Welcome, exclaimed Mama Bear, hugging the bull. What shall we give? What name shall we give our cub? I have no idea. I know bear names, but not names for fish. How about Bruno? Too common. Pause. It, all the things like about finding something that fits. And you can see how beautifully illustrated that is. So this is on a totally different world. This is a story that I would have loved as a child. I loved it as an adult. I kind of love the illustrations, which are reminiscent, for me, have a much more European feel than some of the books we sometimes get in the United States. This is The Ordinary Life of Jacqueminus Gainsborough. It is written by Rebecca Drutrimmer, published by Post Wave Books, children's books. And I love the European feel about this book. I love the pacing, the friendships, the problem solving. I just love this. This would be the kind of a book that I would hope would ignite a delight to travel, a book that would ask where somebody would say, wait, we don't have that where I live. Where is that? And how do I find that? And I just think that's so incredibly important. I also have to admit that I absolutely love this page spread with the portrait illustrations. Okay, it's funny, when I first saw this book, it reminded me of a previous title that was called Life as We Knew It, as We Know It, which was a series of science fiction novels by Susan Pfeffer, I think, actually. But I love the Life as We Know It. Dust swirled and swirled until it places it joined and became a new thing. Just sort of like, where does life come from? What is gravity? The whole idea of learning. This is like a really exceptional ignite, delight, and cultivate. The like, what is this? How does it come to be? And other things. And I think it's just spot on. I know I'm running a little bit out of time because I said that I would finish in a reasonable level. I think we often have too limited an idea of what makes a home. And sometimes home is a backpack or the people we are with, or home is a person. And Flora's books, it does an exceptional job with so many different stories. And My Home is in My Backpack is just another example. This is Eugenia Perella and Angela Salerno. It is absolutely pitch perfect. The five of us in my family, Papa, Mama, my brother Pedro, my dog Coco, and me, Clara. At nighttime, we like looking for shooting stars, who, literally looking at, figuring like, where are you going to sleep? Where are you going? What is it that's important to you? What do you carry? How do you move from one location to another, whether that's a forced move or a chosen move? I think this book is so worldly in so many different ways as we look at it and as we think about it with hope. Um, Tiger Tales. I've kind of been a big fan of Tiger Tales for a long time, and Carnival Queen is just a fun, absolutely, great celebration of Carnival and looking and helping kids to understand the role that celebrations and Carnival might play around the world. So I'm super excited about that and happy with the back matter. Um, Zamzam for everyone, sharing water at a Hajj. I think it's really, really important for us to look at stories that are set all around the world and what the role is that they play. And Makkah's bustling and brimming and bursting at the seams. There are people from every country I can think of in me, and I stand on the tips of my toes to see through the sea of people, waves of white cloth, black abayas, and groups of matching hijabs. I was really lucky to be able to start my year in India. I'd never been to India before, and to really immerse myself for a very short amount of time in Indian culture. And I've also had a chance to spend time in the Middle East as well. And I just think that this is just a really good example of exploring the world and the story of Zamzam and looking at the treats and other things like that, connecting kids. So I think it's just really good. Okay, like obviously this is a book that I would love. This is Samuel Wilbert Tucker and the 1939 sit-down strike for library reading equality. This is Fight for the Right to Read. Why is it that some people did not have the same access to books that other people's have? We've often used literacy and the right to read as a control, and we just need to make sure that everybody has access to it. And literally, let's make sure that everybody can use the library. Whether it's, there's so many stories of people being locked out of the library, and nobody should ever be locked out of the library. And they should be able to read what they want when they want to read. Because here's the deal: nobody has ever died from a reading related disease unless it's related to mold. So just don't let your books get moldy. All right. My Ganesha Chaturthi, Words of Wisdom. This is Eternal Tree books. I will admit that I was less knowledgeable about Eternal Tree books, but I had two Eternal Tree books on my radar. My Ganesha and my Vesak Day of Buddha, just helping me learn more about the world around. And, Ganesha's head, as I said, I was recently in India and I learned a lot more about Ganesh and Ganesha. And so I'm just delighted that we have more and more picture books to help to help explore the world. I'm a graphic novel. I believe everybody should be able to read graphic novels, and I'm a big graphic novel fan, and I'm always looking for graphic novels by publishers that I'm less familiar with. And My Trip with Drip by Helvetica is one of those graphic novels that I really love, that the kids love, that is gripping and has all kinds of potential. I'm super always excited about a little bit of like good stories. And I haven't finished Frank the Monster, but I read a lot of Frank the Monster published by Gecko Press because I'm a big Gecko Press fan. The only reason I haven't finished it is one of my students actually grabbed it. A former student grabbed it. So, but I am excited to read Frank the Monster, and I just think that has a lot of potential. Her voice had this sharp tone that meant she wouldn't tolerate any hassle. So I said goodbye to Alice and hurried home. I just kind of love some of the lines in it. I have a lot on my TBR pile today, and these are just some of the books that are on my TBR pile. I've been reading a lot of Minnesota books. There's a large Minnesota Hmong population, and at one point I was doing a lot of work in the Minnesota public schools and the St. Paul public schools, and I'm always looking to increase my knowledge about Hmong. I love any book that's about mail or other things like that. I'm looking forward to reading this Earth Heroes book because I just think we need to do a better job about taking care of the earth. I just got Matthew Swanson and Roby Bear's new heavily illustrated novel in the mail. I'm super excited about this. And there's a series of books that I don't think enough people know about, but I'm generally pretty happy with. And they're like this one's how do quarterbacks throw a perfect pass. I mean, I probably should have featured that around the Super Bowl. And then how do hurricanes have an eye? So we talked for a little while about some all kinds of books. I'm hoping it's been a little bit useful for you. I want you to really think about this idea that books are, for many of us, our first museum, our first travel experience, our first encounter with a food we may not have yet to try. Books are really our windows into the world. As Rudine Sims Bishop, the emeritus professor of The Ohio State, says, books are windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And in that, we need to provide a wide variety of opportunities for students to see a wide variety of books, past, present, and possibly the future, set here in the United States, set all around the world, set published in English, but maybe originally published somewhere else. There's so many different things. If you're not familiar with the Mildred Batchelder Award, which recognizes highly distinguished books that were originally published in another country, in another language, before they were translated and made available by a publisher in English, I really highly recommend that. If you're not familiar with the list that USBBY puts out, which is a subset of IBI. I really highly recommend that. And at this point, it's probably Ellen really wants me to stop talking, and probably most of you want me to stop talking as well.
Never, never. I'm going to allow Janice Miller has had her hand raised the entire time.
Okay.
Janice, did you have a question? Or did you accidentally raise your hand?
I have no answers.
Okay. I am going to. Oh,
thanks, Ellen, for letting me babble.
We can't hear you, but please put it in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And Susannah, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. It is so interesting. Let us know if you would like Susannah to do this again. I know I would.
I know, but it's got to be a different topic, and who knows?
I know, right?
I'd like to do from picture book to novel. Like, how do we pair picture books with more sophisticated? Because, like, Barbed Wire Between Us is just such a good example of a book that I think we should be teaching.
They Called Us Enemy.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So, yeah. I mean, they're just like, there's so many, plus they're graphic novels that we could use. Obviously, there's also there are lots of mouths and other things. I just think it's a really good example. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We will be sending out the recording and the finished book list tomorrow. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and stay tuned for more webinars.
All right. Well, love to all. I hope nobody has quite as much snow as, I guess, Rhode Island probably topped it with 30 inches. We only had like 18 inches here.
That's all.
So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Ellen, for having this idea. I believe this is going to be available on YouTube for anybody.
It will be, yes. We'll be sending out that link.
We've got most of the spreadsheet done, but we're going to add a few titles to it as well.
Yep.
All right. So take care,
everybody.
Ellen. Thank you. We had the ALA Youth Media Awards that were announced, and those were announced in late January in Chicago. And I just want to remind everybody that if you haven't seen the list of absolutely fabulous books that was selected for the Newbery, the Caldecott, the Pura Belpré, the Schneider Family Award, the Geisel, the Coretta Scott King Award, the Stonewall Award, the Margaret Batchelder Award, and many, many other awards that represent different kinds of affirmations and high quality literature. Those are available. I also recently had the honor of chairing the 2025 Boston Globe Horn Book Awards. And I apologize that the screen grabs I did on these are a little weak, but In June of 2025, we announced these 9 books as uh, excellent books for the Boston Globe Horn Book Committee. We had 3 award winners, Death in the Jungle, Everything We Never Had, and I Know How to Draw an Owl as the winners. And then we had 6 honor books. But you can look for those. But what I'm